there's no guarantees, but we can improve our odds, and we can improve the odds for the kids. And that's what we have a moral obligation to do.
Mr. DeWine, you touched on it. Some of these school floor plans are in pretty tattered shape. Some of them are complete. In view of that, do you think the state law, do you think House Bill 422, as it addresses that, should be more specific? Should that be gone into and literally become more codified in state law?
Well, I guess I would ask you to take a look, if you've not done so, at the report that was put out by our task force a couple of days ago, which gives some indication, I think the first time really, a template of how you fill that form out. The second question is the quality of the plan, or the advisability of the plan. We hope to deal with that with education, with seminars, with meetings, collaboratively. If the legislature wants to draft legislation to do that, I guess they can do that. That's their job. I'm not sure it's necessarily conducive to legislation. I'm open to that, but I think it's mostly information and working with the local school districts. But you're correct. If you look at the plans, they're all over the place as far as the quality. And it's not, it's a safety plan. What do we do? And it's also the floor plan. So there's kind of, we lump those two together, but they're in essence kind of separate.
Yeah, some of the floor plans are pretty sketchy and pretty.
Well, some are, and you get down to problems of them being filed not electronically, and then so we have to scan them, and then the scan's only as good as what we're scanning in, and so if what we're scanning in is not very good, that's a problem. We've run into that. So we started right after starting to try to work with the schools and say, look, this plan, we can't scan this plan very well, So we're working back and forth with them, and that had never been done before, but we're doing it.
Of those 4,000 and some floor plans, what percentage would you say are in very minimal
Okay, team
shape?
We anecdotally believe that a relatively high percentage will not follow the guidelines put out this week. So we're going to be, in the coming months, reviewing the plans against the guide as just a bare minimum, and we believe a very high percentage do not meet the guidelines that we've set forth this week.
Can you say that on tape, please?
Yeah.
Step to the mic.
Yeah, I'll say it.
Yeah.
Basically, we believe, we put the guidelines out, and I want to make it clear, this was guidelines that came from the task force of educators and law enforcement officials, prepared this guideline. It had never been done before. We are now in the process of setting those guidelines out to all schools in the state of Ohio. We believe that a significant number of the schools do not really fit the guidelines that we have put out. In fairness to the schools, they never had guidelines before. The legislation never provided for guidelines before. We have taken that upon ourselves to come up with guidelines in this working group. We think there are many, many schools in the state who do not comply, and what we will be doing in the months ahead and weeks ahead is to working with those school districts to help them understand that and to get them to comply. But this is something that includes not just public schools. Let me make it very clear. This includes parochial schools, it includes charter schools, all different forms of schools. And we're going to work with all of them and try to help.
Superintendent Sawyer, if it's true that this is the needed specificity is more than legislation can handle, would you recommend immediate action by the state board on new rules for plans, prescriptive rules?
I can't say it's immediate action. I think it's worthy of conversation with the State Board of Education to determine what rulemaking authority they would choose to exercise beyond what's provided by legislation. But I don't know that just establishing the rule is necessarily the solution. That could be a consequence because there is a rule. I actually think working directly with the schools throughout the state of Ohio, it's possible to actually get schools in the state to comply and look at the new guidelines that are being provided as a best practice without creating a rule or telling them there's a consequence for ultimately having to enact this. I have to believe that the majority of school districts, if not all in the state of Ohio, clearly understand the responsibility they have for public safety related to students, and ultimately will make this a priority in their school or school district given recent events that have occurred.
The new buildings that are being constructed with the help of the state through the School Facilities Commission, how much of their plans are based on security?
I can't give you specifics through Ohio Schools Facilities Commission. I don't know that off the top of my head. I apologize.
Do we know whether there's extra money built into security?
I know
that wasn't there
security and
before?
safety is part of the actual development, so there is a discussion, but I can't tell you that there's specific dollars set aside that deals with beyond the locked access, a buzzer system, or those specific aspects that are required in the plan. I can't speak generally to that.
You wouldn't know whether there's video surveillance built into these
I cannot
plans?
answer that.
Anybody else?
Talk a little bit about this. If you're a parent in a district and you go to your school district, they're going to tell you that the safety plan is confidential for probably obvious reasons. At the same time, how do you know whether your school district has an adequate plan? You know, how can you, as a parent or taxpayer, hold your school district accountable for that when those plans are not public?
From my perspective, I would use at the local level as part of your committee that's actually working on this. There should be a PTA, PTO, or parent representation that's part of that for a parent's perspective to be represented in the plan development. And then he or she, as a member of that committee, actually becomes part of the voice that can demonstrate, although it's confidential, clearly for safety and security purposes, that the parent voice has been represented and there's a trust factor that's established that has been considered, and they should be integral and part of that team. Just like law enforcement, emergency responders. So the parent does have a critical role, but it's not to take the plan and then email it to every parent in the school district to prove we do have a plan. So that has to be part of the communication path that's actually established in development of the committee and the plan.
And let's be honest, in the real world, how this works. You have kids in school, the kids come home and tell you, we just had this drill and this is what we did. I mean, you're going to pick it up. If you're a parent, you're listening to your kids are going to come back and tell you, you're asking them exactly what they did that day as far as preparation. So anecdotally, you're going to pick up a lot of it. You may not see it on paper. But as the superintendent said, you know, the best practices, I think, as the schools develop this plan is to include parents, a parent representative in that committee that comes up with that plan. And that would be a mistake not to do that.
Real quick, the training in January, how will this be different than kind of drills and training that teachers have already had on safety things and so forth?
Well, I would say that this is a big state, and we have a lot of school districts. We have over 4,000 buildings. Many of these school districts may have already received good training, and so we're not being judgmental about that. What we're simply saying is this training is available. And we want to make it available not just to the people who attend this session in January, but we're going to put these in partnership with the Department of Education. We're going to put this training out all around the state. My experience in dealing with law enforcement officers is the difficulty and the challenge is getting that training out to them and having them have time to take the course, even if it's only a 4-hour course. That's the challenge, and that's the challenge to the local school district, because every time you have someone getting training, they're not teaching, they're not doing whatever else they're doing. It's the same way with law enforcement. Our problem getting law enforcement officers to do our training, which we provide most of it for free, is just time commitment and money commitment from that local police department. It's the same challenge with the local school.
Attorney General DeWine, we have a lot